Okay, welcome to the podcast, everybody. I'm back here with Jake and Simon here, sort of 3 areas of expertise to bring on this podcast. Now, some really interesting news here. Last week, actually, Trek announced that they were going to downsize their range by 40%. Took us by shock, I think.
Well, I don't think they actually announced it.
Kind of. I mean, it got released to the public. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. But what we thought would be a great, interesting and fun thing to do was imagine that 3 of us were sat on the board of directors at Trek, like that's never going to happen. And if we had to make the decision as to cull 40% of the humongous Trek range, what would we kill? We started talking about the workshop, and we've been talking about it. Just doing a podcast, it'll be fun.
Sounds good. So you're going to be John Burke?
Yeah.
I'll be the one that gets the biggest bonus.
So, first of all, I've got to applaud it because anyone that's read any sort of business theory, Jim Collins is good to great sort of stinks out to me about businesses that really try and become great have to go through this period of reflection of establishing loads and loads of heavy bureaucracy and then putting their foot down and going, no, we've got to become agile and efficient again. And that's what Trek's done. Brilliant. I think, someone stood up there and made a really good leadership decision. So this is going to be a bit of a fun podcast, but at the same time, I think we all agree that this is a good thing for Trek and the industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I think Trek's range is massively bloated, isn't it? I mean, you just go on their website, and even just talking about it there's so much stuff on there.
Well, yeah, I'd love to be sitting in their boardroom. I mean, unfortunately, we don't have access to all their numbers. We know what their overall revenues are, but we don't know per product line. And there's different SKUs, so we're in a kind of position where we're going to have to speculate a little bit here, I think.
That's a good point. Yeah, we don't have access to their sales data. This is just on, the bikes that we enjoy working on, what we hear in the community and what people talk about and things like that. So I want to start, because most of our audience are road bikers. If you look down at our analytics, we should probably start at road and then work our way through the categories and tick this one off. So they're in road bike, they have 4 bikes in my mind: the Domane, the Emonda, the Madone, and the Speed Concept. Now, before everyone thinks this is going to be a hating on Trek podcast, I want to say the Emonda is excellent and they should double down on the Emonda.
I agree. I think they should slim it down a little bit because, of course, in the Emonda range, they've got the ALR, which I really like. We've had that on the channel recently. I think that's a great bike, good value. And then they have the SL, which is like the middle frame, and the SLR, which is the top spec frame. I don't think you need three different tiers of frame in that Emonda range.
But I mean, just before we kind of deep dive, I think it's important to set a bit of context here. I mean, if you look on their website, I think there's about 50 families they have. The Emonda is one of those families.
Yeah.
And in the Emonda range, I think there's 18 models.
It's insane, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's before we get into frame sizes, different frame sizes, and different colours. I think if you kind of did the maths quickly, there'd be about 36 sub-SKUs within the Emonda.
Well, the nice thing about the Emonda is that they always used to do 2 geometries. They used to do the H1 fit and the H2 fit. And it was brilliant because you could have a race bike, but you could have the H2 fit, which is the slightly more relaxed fit, if you like. But they stopped doing that now, and they've just done the H1. H1.5, they call it now. But with that, they've suddenly gone every single group set, every single colour. And then they've got the Pro, and then the Pro disc, and if you scroll through.
I mean, it's mind-boggling from their perspective, I'm sure, but put yourself in the shoes of a consumer that wants to buy a bike. Oh. I mean, it's totally overwhelming. You walk into some store and try and get a sense of which bike to buy. I mean, there's just way too much information to take on board there, I think.
It is. I can't imagine being like a buyer and like a sort of shop owner going into the Trek range and going, oh my God, how do I choose what my customers might want from this?
Yeah.
And some of the differences are so small as well. So, okay, on the Emonda then, generally I think that's a great bike. The ALR, double down on that, absolutely. I think, should be such a good entry-level bike. I'd choose that over and above like a cheap entry-level carbon any day.
Yep.
The top of the range Emonda, I think, is so versatile and fits an enormous amount of people. And you can do what you want with it. And I love the project one. The Madone.
Yeah. I mean, they've still got the last 2 generations of Madone on the website.
That must be a stock Bloat.
I think so.
Left over, yeah.
And they still have an SL and an SLR version of the Madone again.
Yeah.
I think really the Madone should really be the top dog, shouldn't it? It should be that last little tickle of performance and no messing. And I think they should probably really lean into the project one with that as well, rather than having 6 different colours for every different spec range. I think the Project One is something they offer that's very unique.
Well, I think that's an interesting point. I mean, is that the route they should be going down? I mean, I applaud them for looking at Project One in terms of custom build, custom spray. But is that really their niche business? Should they be leaving that to other more independent organizations? Should they focus on just getting the key components out there, getting the basic bikes and leaving that to others? Just a question. I mean,
I think they should lean into Project One because it will reduce their amount of SKU counts. Because the great thing about Project One, a bit like what we did with Ridley, but it never really worked out, was that you should be able to go on and choose your bike. And if it's not in stock, like the tyres that you want aren't in stock, that shouldn't delay the entire delivery of your bike. You should just be, okay, well, I'll choose a different set of tyres and get my bike delivered next week rather than have to wait a month.
So, imagine we're in the boardroom then, and we talk. John's there. He's going, okay, if you're going to do Project One, what are you going to not do then? Because that's always the tough thing to decide what you're going to stop doing.
They should, double down on Project One, especially on things like the Madone. They're real headline things, and it should just be 2 colours, 2 specs. Should do Ultegra Dura Race, Force, Red. That's it in 2 colours, and then everything else Project One. Okay. And that's it. Keep that really, really simple, really, really lean. It's a top-end product. Make it really exclusive. I can't see the point of putting a 105 group set on a pale blue.
No.
It
makes no sense. If you've got a 5.5 gram frame, it's like, you want that to really be a special thing, don't you?
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the Project One will differentiate them from brands like Canyon and, Specialized and stuff like that, is that if you are spending that sort of money on a frame, you can then go to Trek and get the exact thing that you want, and that'll be something that it'll hit their target of reducing the number of SKUs, and it will also then give them additional value over those other traditional brands.
Yeah, I think it'd be a key differentiator if they could really pull it off. Yeah,
because it's such a small thing. Yeah. The Mane, I'm going to be bold. They just need to kill it. It just needs to be eradicated.
Well, I think there's 22 sub-SKUs within Damane, if I remember rightly.
And there's probably, I bet you, it's one of their best sellers.
It will be. I mean, we see more Damanes than any other bike in the shop, don't we?
I hate it so much, though.
I agree.
What do you hate about it? I mean, let's be a bit more educated here.
To be honest, a lot of the things I hate about it, they're starting to take out of it. So the ISO speed decoupling headset thing was just rubbish. They just squeak, they wear out the carbon. People have so many problems with that. It makes it heavy. It doesn't serve any other purpose. They made it even worse on the seat post thing, which they've now reverse track on that and taken the front one out and just got this thing at the back. You're engineering in vertical compliance by adding weight. It's ridiculous. And then the range is so bloated. So if you want an endurance bike with a high stack and a short reach, and then why are you fitting like SRAM red group sets to it and making it £12,000 for an endurance bike? And the mudguard mounting system isn't even good. Just the whole thing winds me up.
No, I think the problem we're going to run into here is that although I've shared pretty much the same opinion, I don't like the Damane at all. The problem is it is a really, really good selling bike in terms of, well, obviously I can't verify that, but in terms of what we see in the shop, how many you see on the roads.
How many we fix.
How many we fix.
Well, I guess that's a key point. How many can be fixed as opposed to serviced?
Yeah. How are they going to replace that, or what is going to be the solution? If you wanted to get rid of the Damane, what's your pitch?
The checkpoint.
Yeah.
Tell me that majority of customers that we have in here who are riding a Damane would probably be better off riding a checkpoint with road tyres.
That's what I was thinking when I was looking at the website last night. I was thinking, the checkpoint is an area where they could double down a bit more.
Yeah, and the checkpoint's fantastic.
It is.
It's stiff. It's slightly longer than the Damane, so slightly more stable handling, a slightly relaxed head angle as well. And it gives you what I think probably endurance. Endurance for me is when you long day out and you want to be comfortable and you want to be stable. Even when you're tired and exhausted, you want your bike to just feel like it's got your back. And the checkpoint does that.
It does, yeah.
Proper endurance bike. The Damane is an armchair on wheels.
But what would you speculate is their kind of the key cash cows here then? That they've got to be careful not to throw the baby out with the bathwater type thing.
The Amonda, and again, the Amonda can pick up a lot of slack. They brought back the H1 and H2 geometry, cut down some of that. I think that would be awesome.
I think so. I think their proper big sellers are not actually in the road category. I think where the majority of their volume comes from is stuff like the cheap hardtails, like the Marlin, which is, again, it's not the most exciting bike in the world, but it's just a solid, reliable, nice little hardtail.
Oh, for sure. And I think I can probably hear every single Trek dealer out there listening to this screaming at us, what about the Marlin?
Yeah.
Seems quite a lot on the shop floor at Wheelbase recently.
Yeah. And as well, their e-bike range is it's massive, but again, we see tons of them. We see absolutely tons of them, and so I can't see them massively knocking down on that sort of thing, like the cheaper bikes and stuff like that. Because I think they just ship so many of them.
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, if I was in their shoes, I'd be looking at where is the world heading in terms of infrastructure and, obviously green and government infrastructure investments in cycling infrastructure around the world. Let's not just look at the UK. Let's look around the world. And I would definitely put some big bets on e-bikes. And you look at the price of batteries have come down significantly. I was looking at some analytics in terms of searching, and the searches for e-bikes relative to searches for other types of bikes is still up there, if not growing. So I definitely think between now and 2030 that'll be quite a significant group.
They've actually got, I think, one of the strongest e-bike ranges.
Yeah, great
there for sure. And been really difficult to take anything out of that e-bike range, if anything, double down on it. And almost the same with the City. They've got two really nice models, the FX and the FX Sport. Yep. I really love that. The FX Sport is lovely. And again, a lot of people that ride a Dominate might actually be better served by something like the FX Sport, which I think is a really cracking bike.
So is this part of a marketing? And are people not going to ride it because they think it's not cool to ride it? Is there going to be some marketing effort here really to make some of these bikes fit the slot that we think they should fit if we were Trek?
I have no idea. I mean, I'd be looking at that crossover. Yeah, you're right. The whole road and gravel thing has become quite bloated. We're just going back to that Demande Checkpoint FX Sport thing. The gravel, there's now Checkpoint Boone and Crockett, which used to be a traditional cyclocross.
Well, the Boone is the proper cyclocross bike. They could probably cut down on that, to be honest. You don't need 3 models of Boone. As much as I love cyclocross, and you could just have the top spec frame, and I think it would probably sell just about the same.
I think you're right. They could probably sell that frame only and do quite well.
Yeah,
I don't. Checkpoint is awesome. I think the Checkpoint is such a good bike.
There is something else I wanted to bring up as well.
Go on.
Trek have 3 fat bikes. Why? why on earth did Trek have 3 separate fat bikes? You don't need 3. You don't need 1. Well, I mean, one customer might be upset if you get rid of the 4.
I think fat bikes exist in the category for niche. That's where people like Salsa and Brown.
Yeah, Sonder will probably sell about as many as Trek do.
Yeah, I really don't. I don't see why Trekker even tried to be bothering to be in that game at all, to be honest. There is some crazy stuff like that in their range.
Yeah, scrap the fat bikes. And I mean, also their trail bikes. If you go on, there's like 7 different trail bikes.
Their mountain bike range is definitely getting very bloated.
I don't get it. I don't understand why there's like 4 bikes that are like Remedy / Session and Fuel. Or they're all the same. Like I know there's marginal differences and slight different bits and pieces like that, but there's no real differentiator. It looks like a Session.
Yes.
So there's no. What is the point in Trek having 4 different? I mean, even 5. Because you got Fuel EX, Top Fuel. Yeah. All it's like 5, 6, 7 different trail bikes, and it just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I think that's where actually something like Project One could be really helpful, because you essentially have the same sort of chassis, but then you can just choose either a 140 or a 150 mil travel fork. And then I'd love it if they had like these Project Ones in stores, and the staff would actually be able to talk people through making some of those small choices rather than trying to choose between a Fuel or a Fuel EX. Just change the specification to turn it into the bike that you want.
Exactly.
It would massively help. I mean, warehousing now must be so good that once you press go, it's just a case of a robot picking and packing, join the production line. Someone builds that bike for you, puts it in a box, job done. I can't see why we need to build bikes on a massive production line in volume and then throw out new models.
I have so many families and so many names within those families. I mean, I'm sure you could simplify a lot of these families and group them under, and you could keep some of the key names, but I think you could consolidate the names. Because just from a marketing and even just from a logistics point of view, having all these different names and families and sub-SKUs, it must create a hell of a lot of extra administration.
It's just confusing to the consumer as well, isn't it?
Apart from that as well.
Yeah, it's like, if you want to buy a trail bike, how do you decide between 7 different? You think, I really want a Trek. I love watching Amelia Hansen ride his Trek down Crankworks. I want one. How do you then decide which one you're going to buy? It's just baffling.
It is, and their website is actually not actually that helpful in that either, because they call everything trail bike, and you just get these lovely videos and images, and a lot of the data is all hidden away, and it's quite hard to find all the spec. And trying to make an informed decision on the mountain bike range is is bonkers because they blur the categories between cross country, trail, enduro, and yeah.
So if they were doubling down on Project One, I mean, how do you see AI potentially technologies playing a part there?
Oh, interesting. I think AI could probably have quite a lot to say in that. That should definitely help with what sort of bikes are in demand in certain parts of the world, or even down into counties. I mean, the needs of our riders is so different to the needs of the riders in the Midlands, for instance. That's massively different.
I think, you could probably, if you've got a project, say you have the Project One section on the website, you could say it, you've like ChatGPT, you could describe your riding style, what you're going to ride, and it can then recommend you
I would have to do that. You could just upload your Strava routes.
Well, that'd be smart. All the data's there.
Upload your Strava routes to the Trek AI, and it says,
recommend my bike.
Yeah.
You recommend my bike. Project One it out.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's going to be possible.
Well, that's
quick copyright here.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, I didn't get a chance to do it before we came in, Paul. But it was on my mind this morning as I was riding along in the pouring rain, thinking along those lines, you wouldn't have to have all these names because all your bike is being tailored for your personal need. At minimum, I mean, obviously using standard components, so you don't have got thousands of different components, but you get much more personalised deliverable.
Yeah,
it's got to be a way to go.
Project Run is such a differentiator for Trek. I'd be so keen to double down on that.
I do think they should leave it for the very, very high end stuff, though. I don't think I think because if they're trying to reduce the number of SKUs and the number of the bloat of what they're doing, I think stuff like a Marlin, an ALR, a Monda, a Crockett, for example,
an FX, a Dual Sport,
I think they should be left as a standard. You buy this, you get the Bontrager wheels on it, you get a 105 group set, and that's that.
Yeah,
and to stop them overflowing again.
Yeah, they've got to.
Whereas
how many
stuff like the top dog Emonda, the top dog Madone, the really nice Checkpoint, all your nice mountain bikes like your Super Caliber and all that sort of stuff, I think that's what should be put through Project One.
Totally agree.
Well, it sounds like our key piece of advice to John Burke is double down on Project One.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And your warehousing, like warehouses should be so easy now that you can have all that built. You should be able to pick, go. Even the option to say, do you know what? I don't even want a set of forks. I've got the forks from my old bike. Just deliver it to me without a set of forks.
Well, it's a radical new way of thinking compared to what we've been used to. I think that industry's going to have to really pivot to that.
It'll make it so much more eco-friendly as well. There's so much wastage.
True.
And stuff.
Yeah, and I think something else I wanted to bring up, talking like wastage and stuff, is the sheer amount of just crap you can buy from Trek and all of their kind of adjacent
qualify that
like Bontrager
crap.
I think if you wanted to, you could buy an haircut from the Trek website. Like I was going through
what? Sorry,
a haircut.
If
you really they've got so much stuff on there. It's like I was scrolling through last night and they sell a £700 set of ceramic bearings for one wheel. There's six bearings in there and it's £700.
Who buys that?
And they have every single and all their like proprietary suspension parts, like through shocks and stuff. They have all of that listed on the website. They have all their Bontrager, all their like random stuff that you could just get rid of it.
To be fair, the seal kits for through shocks is quite useful because RockShox and Fox don't always sell them themselves, so we often have to buy them from the Trek store.
No, but I would probably be a proponent of just getting rid of through shock, to be honest.
Yep, that would definitely be helpful. Through shock was definitely not a good idea. Not the one with the shaft actually went through the oil, and you always end up with oil leaks everywhere. The newer ones, through shaft was definitely a bad idea. Some of the OCLV ones work okay with like the little expansion chamber, but that spring always gets stuck when we service them. You have to spend loads of time getting.
Yeah, I think all of that Trek adjacent stuff, I think could really, really slim down. Like,
well, the equipment and clothing section is pretty good.
It's massive, isn't it? It's absolutely massive.
Yeah. I was looking through it last night as well.
Looking through the shoe section, they've got as many shoes as that Physique have.
Well, there's just
not even a shoe brand.
They just released a £400 pair of shoes about 3 weeks ago, and it's like, if you really want a really nice set of shoes, you go into Nimble or Quok, or you're not buying a set of Bontragers, are you?
No. Oh yeah, I've just seen them. Yeah, Trek RSL knit road shoes, £400. That's insane.
They didn't look nice. They're grey.
And
who wants that?
If you really want a nice set of shoes, what you're doing is going to a shop which has got lots for you to try on. You're going to get a really professional fitting service, and you're probably going to buy something from, like, say, DMR or something really nice. Yeah. The clothing section is also insane, and why all the tools and just locks.
That's what I mean. They're just crap. It's just utter crap. Like, why do they need it?
Most of it reminds me of basically scrolling through AliExpress, and all they've done is rebrand a whole load of AliExpress stuff with the Trek logo. I don't think it does them any favours at all.
Allegedly.
Yeah, and we have no idea what sort of revenue or what sort of margins they're making from this. But yeah, I mean, if I was in their shoes, I'd be thinking, like, we're a bike company. Let's really double down on what we do best, and that's building bikes. And to me, it goes back to that project one, building best quality bikes that really meet individuals' needs, and let's not confuse and overwhelm our market.
Yeah, and deliver them.
Yeah.
So there's an awful lot of brands out there, Canyon, etc., are now bogged down, and like Trek have probably got the infrastructure to actually deliver stuff.
Yeah, well, I think through COVID, it was like the Marlin was about the only bike you could get hold of, and it's like, that's brilliant. It's like,
now they can't give them away.
Yeah. They for love nor money, there's just a Marlin in every corner of every shop. But yeah, that's just.
And in terms of back catalogue and spares and things, I mean, what do you imagine they're carrying there, and what do you think they should cease to do in terms of supporting from a certain date? I mean,
Well, I think it's not. I think if they can slim down their range, it'll be much, much easier to keep up with spares, wouldn't it? Because if they're then reducing, say, the number of, because I mean, even if you look at the amount of spare back ends they've got on the website, there's every colour, every size for every full suspension bike they've made in the last about 10 years, still kicking about on the accessories website.
That actually reminds me of a conversation that we had with the guy from DT Swiss at that show. Do you remember when he was talking about how hard it is for the project managers or the brand leaders to decide what they're going to do with spares, and they make a new hub. They order about another 20% worth of spares that they think is going to last them about 10 years. But a lot of the time, after 10 years, they're throwing stuff away, which is probably why the Chinese wheel brands, etc., don't do any spares, because they don't want the wastage, trying to keep everything lean, but it doesn't help you when you want the spares. So maybe they've over-bloated and over-predicted how much stuff they're going to break.
Which is probably a nice thing, actually, if you think about that.
Yeah, it is. I'd applaud them. The fact that they put some money into actually keeping things rolling and keeping things going. Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, if you break a rear triangle of your Trek bike after 5-6 years, are you going to be really upset if it comes in plain black?
Yeah, probably not. Oh, Project One.
Or yeah, could you Project One it and get it spray painted? Would you wait a little bit longer to have it painted in the colour that? I mean, you're never going to get a colour match after it's been ridden for 5 years, are you?
It's not going to be the same, is it?
It's definitely the whole thing really feels like there's a whole lot of marketing meetings that have gone on. Oh, what about this, and what about this, and what about that consumer? Or should we make a bike for that?
I think Trek they've tried. It looks like they've tried to make a bike for everyone.
Well, I would imagine there's competing departments, teams all pressing their case, and it's, somebody's got to rule at the end of the day. We're not going to do that. We're going to do this, and we're going to stop doing that type thing. I think that's probably been their challenge. That everybody's got loads of great ideas, but we need to look at it more holistically as a company and say, well, what are we about? What do we want to be known for? What is our brand? What do we stand for?
It's I think it's going to be an exciting chapter in Trek's history.
I'm looking forward to saying, where we get to by 2026, because that's when obviously this is supposed to happen by, in terms of these 40% reduction in SKUs. And obviously the first thing they've got to do is do the 10% reduction. So where's that coming from?
Yeah, that's there's some really big decisions to be made at Trek, and it's going to be a very scary but exciting time, I think. So yeah. On that bombshell, have you got anything more to?
I think that's all from me.
No, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast today. A good little glimpse. Get down there in the comments. What would you kill from the 40%? We read all our comments and really, really learn so much.
And what would you double down on as well?
Yeah. What would you double down on? What do you really, really like in the Trek range? Yeah, get it down there in the comments. Add to the argument. I don't know if anyone from Trek's going to watch this, but who knows? Let's see what happens. Let's check back in 2026. If you like that sort of content, please give it a thumbs up and think about subscribing to the channel. We'll see you next Wednesday.